Hello and welcome to episode 20 Effects of War on Common Citizens. Today's episode is not only special but also informative because we are going to go a little off topic from the world of defense. We are going to actually analyze what are the disadvantages of heavily investing in the defense without the knowledge or without taking care of the civilian casualties. So today, to have a deep insights into this subject and get a better understanding of a complete civilian side of this subject, we have today with us Victoria Silva Sanchez. Hi, Victoria. Glad to have you
Hi,
on the podcast.
thank you so much. Pleasure is mine to be able to share with you anything I could know about this issue.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm really glad you could have given us this precious time of yours from the busy schedule and yeah. So before we take a deep dive into the subject, can you tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of because you yourself were actually working as in the I would say primarily in the defense sector as a journalist, but then transition into something completely different path of the career. So can you just tell us about your journey and what inspired you to do what you're doing right now?
Yes, sure. Well, as you say, I am a journalist and communicator by training. This is why I have studied in the university. But then I was quite so much interested about international politics. So I specialized myself in international relations and peace, security, and defense, particularly focus on the geographical areas of Middle East and Africa, particularly East Africa. So yes, throughout all my education, let's say I have been developing what I was interested working on. But actually, what was most fundamental to me was going to live and work in Jordan. I have been based in Jordan for 5 years, and there I work as a journalist, freelance journalist mainly, covering international politics of the region. Um, Jordanian politics, but also other conflicts that sadly are taking place in the area. So that was really fundamental to be there, living and working as, let's say, another more citizen on that country, because it really helped me shape my knowledge and experience, first-hand experience of the region I was, let's say, I was studying. And I believe that this fact of living there and just having my life there at the same time I was working professionally, it was key for me to understand a lot of things. Also, once I left Jordan to return to Spain, which is where I'm from. Let's say, I accumulated a knowledge and experience about the region, but also the culture of the people, social issues, social differences, etc. That has allowed me now to, let's say, to apply to my own society in terms of understanding questions that we are facing right now in European societies, particularly the clash that we have between those people who migrate here seeking for a better life, and political dynamics that are developing in our society. So yeah, I will say that has kind of been my journey, starting from that journalistic training, and then transitioning through um, training and professional experience in international affairs and in the Middle East in particular, and then returning back with all that baggage with me back to my country.
Amazing. I think the experience that you have just mentioned, I'm pretty sure it's going to be Very much inspiring for the students, because there are a lot of students who actually listen to this podcast. And I believe, as you mentioned, your transition from journalist to, an international affairs expert to, coming back to the home ground. I mean, this is something that each and every career branch actually gives you an exposure to something which wide opens your perspective and lets you, see the window of opportunity which you were actually unaware about previously. So I believe, yeah, each and every, career path at the end of the day helps you know much more better things, and also, of course, shapes you into a better human being as well. So yeah, as we take a deep dive into this subject, as you have expertise in the media and journalism segment, so can you also share with us some experiences, possibly related to the humanitarian initiatives? Because, as you mentioned, like you have transitioned from journalist to international affairs, then you came back. So, can you share with us some humanitarian activities or initiatives experience that you had in the course of time?
Yeah, well, definitely. For instance, I think when I was living in Jordan, I not only work as a journalist, but I also work in the context of local NGOs that were implementing projects in quiet, deprived areas of the country. And for me, being able to have the chance to work on that, we call refugee camps, but they are not actually a refugee camp as we understood with the tents and this. No, I'm talking about Palestinian refugee camps that have been there for already almost 80 years. So they are actually towns and cities. And for me, it was very shocking to be able to access there, because these areas are kind of a different world, let's say, from rest of any city in Jordan. And I really was very lucky to have the chance to be there, to work implementing projects that we were trying to raise awareness among civil officers regarding how to access better information. But also I had the chance to visit schools where children were learning how to recycle. And it was interesting because these children are learning how to recycle and keep their school clean, while if you go outside the school, these people are facing a problem that there is no public services picking their trash in a way that should be decent for people to live, no? So, I mean, there is a lot of contrast that you can find at the same time in the same place. So I believe that being able to be there, share time with them, drink a cup of tea with people while they are explaining to you how is their life there and what they are doing, and show you around all the projects and improvements they are trying to do amid, let's say, not very welcoming conditions, let's say. It has been one of the most experience that have impacted me, let's say.
All right.
But I believe also, like, for instance, I think at this moment I am, well, since long time also being very impacted by, for instance, the problem that we have in the Mediterranean, and how many countries and many governments, including mine, we are leaving people to die on the sea every single day without close, I mean, without not being affected. Like if we, if we don't see them, it's like it didn't happen. But actually, this is happening every day, and I think this is one of the issues that is becoming very much touching for me at this moment. And because when you get to know and you are in contact and you have friends that have gone through that experience already and have been lucky enough to make it, then it's so hard to turn your side back to these other people who are seeking for the same chance and not being able to have it. So I mean, I don't know. I think this is some kind
Yeah.
of experiences that have really shocked me and impacted me and moved me to try to do something. I don't know, something I could. I mean, maybe sometimes cannot be something so huge, but at least you can write an
Yes.
article, maybe because I'm a journalist, but I also like a lot to do kind of pedagogy with the people I know. So I talk to my friends, I talk to my family, I talk to people just to tell them what is happening. So, at least kind of creating a little awareness in my own circles to start, because sometimes it's problem is like society live back to this reality that is happening. So I don't know. I mean, like, there is little things still we can try to do for
Yes.
making the world better.
Yeah, I think it is very challenging situation as you mentioned. So you mentioned in between that the situations have somewhere inspired you possibly or maybe pushed you to take some other route. You're trying to write, you're trying to express it through in the form of writing through your journalism skill set. So can you also tell us, like we have always seen that common citizens, regardless of having, no key role in any kind of armed or conflict or even the political conflict, are the ones paying the price for the political actions of the nation. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, definitely, since, let's say, I mean, always citizens have paid the price for their rulers' decisions, but since, I don't know, during the past 100 years, definitely, I mean, you cannot wage a war if you are not exposing the civilian population to the violence, because otherwise it doesn't make sense to fight that war. So, I mean, we can see it in Ukraine, we can see it in Syria, we can see it in any conflict. Harming and subjecting the civilian population to suffering and violence and death is the way for the rulers to seek and achieve their objectives. Without that pressure that comes from seeing how your population is being displaced and is being assassinated and is being deprived from everything, if you don't have this, it will be hard for any conflict, let's say, to arrive to any negotiation or to arrive to any kind of need for settlement, because, I mean, if they could fight alone in a place that doesn't impact anybody, but it's okay. But of course, it's
Yes.
not possible that this will happen. So definitely, civilian population is the one who will pay always the price for the violence and the war, and it's every time more and more and more and more. The main objective of those who are waging the war, and is sadly, I believe, is going to continue to be like this. And yes, and there is no anymore. There is total disregard nowadays for human rights, for international humanitarian law, for humanity, for empathy, and for anything that at a moment was considered the rules of law, the rules of war. It doesn't even apply anymore. So, I mean, if there is no rules anymore in war, um, hardly what we can expect it will happen. It's total impact on the population and
Yes.
total destruction of all the personal and material and infrastructural capacities of whole nations that will take many, many more years to rebuild than what it's taken to destroy them.
Yes. I think that point is really right that takes many, many years. Some nations don't even actually recover from this kind of, incidents. Like, for example, the international triggering of wars such as Iraq. This they have showcased the effects of war. This can lead to the birth of more extremist group. So, considering this factor from your perspective, how should society and governments in general should deal with refugees coming from war-torn areas? Also, can you tell us how impactful such a strategy can be helpful from a psychological perspective?
Well, I believe the first thing that should not be done is to blame people, just blame them based on what they suffer, and kind of casting doubts on who they are, just because some in that community do something. So I mean, like, I think the treatment of refugees from war-torn areas but should be much better than in what it is nowadays, because today we are not anymore respecting and applying the international laws that we have given ourselves to protect people who have to flee their homes because otherwise they die. So definitely there has to be much more comprehension what happened. Also, governments in some, well, I would everywhere in the world actually, should stop using refugees and people fleeing from violence for their political purposes. Because I mean, everybody is a human being, and no suffering should be seen as worse or better for achieving other political goals that have nothing to do with protecting people in need. Um, I mean, like, I think the first thing is to stop and scapegoating them and pointing to them that they are actually not refugees, but some people coming to us to try to harm us and do us bad and do bad things here. I mean, it's so hard to to imagine that there is mass movement of people seeking for that. No, definitely there is groups that have their own agendas and goals and use the ways they find to to try to achieve their objectives, but in any case, it cannot be that cannot be a reason for neglecting the support that people fleeing from conflict must be given. And psychological perspective, I believe definitely these people need psychosocial support and much stronger any kind of support to be able to overcome what they have gone through, because we don't know really the traumas and mental health issues that people are having out of fleeing, having to leave everything behind, losing their beloved ones, losing their children, their parents, anything, surviving torture, etc. I mean, no need to say everything that they go through, but they go through very hard things that sometimes, because they are a mass of people, they simply become a number, and we stop seeing them as the individual human being they are, each one with their own story, with their own needs, with their own pain, with their own grief, and then it's really hard to address this situation and the consequences it has, because it requires much more political will and all kind of will to be able to address it than what our current governments and societies are willing to do. So I don't know, it
Yeah.
sounded so negative,
Yes.
I think, but I think situation right now and treatment is far away from what it should be.
Yes. You made a really good point previously that the agendas, I believe narratives and agendas kind of rule the world. And I think especially in terms of conflict between the nations and the war situations. The narrative and agendas are always on the play or the cards of the governments. Rather, I would say before the defense agency, it's the governments, not because the defense doesn't move ahead without the government orders. And I think the only people or the only group that is suffering in this narrative and agenda making or the creation are the common citizens. And I think you have already mentioned to about all these factors of what the suffering is, what the people lose, and it's really sad to see. I recently saw the two narratives that were flashing up. One was about Titan submersible that was kind of destroyed at the depth of the sea, which went to explore or the wreckage of Titanic. And there was a migrant ship which I believe was coming from Lebanon. I'm not sure though. And it was having more than 100 migrants on that ship. And that ship sank. But we saw, the narratives from the West, which the news that was covering. I hardly saw, or the people, hardly saw the migrant ship sinking, which lost more than 100 migrants, including small children's. So I believe this is what the narrative is. The way you set the narrative, the way people are going to come to know. And this incident, I guess it happened in just a span of 5 days. But still, the world was so much unaware about it. On the same lines, I would like to continue that. Like currently, millions of people are displaced due to like political instability and armed conflict in several parts of the world. So, do you think the multilateral institutions are doing enough to settle or provide assistance to these displaced people?
No, definitely no. As you as you say, we are having the highest amount of people displaced and refugee ever in history. We are having over 100 million people displaced and refugee currently in the world, and this number doesn't stop growing year after year. So definitely, nobody is doing enough or anything to say. I mean, we are firstly not respecting the international law that has been approved to deal with this problem. We are not anymore offering asylum and giving refugee status to people that are, I mean, they are granted it by international law. So, I mean, this is really sad. We are not doing this. As I said, we are using refugees, hosting some refugees and other not, and using them as weapons against enemy governments that we have, or to seek for any goal that is a political goal of a certain country that has nothing to do with protecting those people. We also have the defense industries that are fueling the conflicts that are making these people flee their homes, with all these technological developments, more lethal weapons every time, contracts for defense cooperation and weapon arms sales that doesn't stop skyrocketing, even to regimes whose record of human rights and treating civilian population with respect is very much in question. But we are just not paying so much attention to it and doing all of these things that are one in contradiction with the other, just for the sake of money, let's say, to put it simple. So definitely no. Countries like the European Union have to do much more than what they are doing actually to face this problem. I mean, there is issues of historical colonization, and there is issues of current economic and political exploitation of those countries still. And I mean, when you support those who doesn't treat their population well, but I mean, it's possible that you can expect that these people will come to you to ask for help. So I mean, and also I believe that there is an interest nowadays in try to mix everything. So because we cannot know anymore if this person is migrating because he's a refugee or not, because his life is threatened or he has suffered violence or whatever. How we differentiate it from this one is migrating only for economic reasons. So there is an interest of trying to call into question, like we cannot accept all those million people who want to come to migrate to improve their economic situation, and then it's allowing to not apply the laws that are made to protect those people who are they qualify as asylum seekers, or they can be granted refugee status. But I mean, by the end, what is the difference, or why it matters the person is coming for this reason, A, B, C, or D, or whatever? I mean, why we want to make category of rights for the people to move, and this category is made from people that we are able to move and go everywhere without nobody telling us if we cannot. So I mean, it's a question. I mean, it's so much social superiority to decide that you are not qualified to move because you are not about to die. Or I mean, I'm not about to die, and I travel wherever I want every time as long as I have money. So I don't know. I mean, just want to see how many there is. A lot of contradictions and points regarding this, that by the end it's only impacting those people that are really suffering and trying to survive in many cases, and we are not answering to them as they should be being answered.
Yes, I believe the multilateral institutes like the United Nations and several others, actually, there's not only one institution, there are several, should actually invest in a much more strategic manner, because I have always seen the United Nations churning out a lot of budget, and the thing that happens is like most amount of the I would say goes into managing the high profile people who are actually spending time not actually on the field but for the desk job, I would say. And there is one sad thing that the primary, especially in the United Nations Security Council, the countries managing possibly the seats on that level are one or the other way, are also possibly trying to fuel the conflict at some point. And it coming from, like, I'm originally from India, and it's a very sad situation and very sad state to see that the United Nations Security Council doesn't include the world's biggest democracy in the UNSC as a permanent member. I mean, uh, you have every other nations, but you don't really have the one of the biggest populated country in the world, which is contributing to several other, like security issues and a lot of things. And I feel, yeah, I think somewhere it is also one-sided. That's the reason we see, kind of no progress from several of the multilateral institutions. But uh, I hope things get better rather than getting worse, because the dynamics possibly might change in the future. And just to follow up on the recent conflict you mentioned between about the Ukraine. So the Ukraine conflict has showcased a streak of racism with respect to the treatment of refugees from Ukraine versus refugees from other parts of the world. So what are your thoughts on this issue and how it has impacted the European Union region in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the idea of what I have been mentioning throughout all the interview, and also following on the story you were sharing about the submarine who sank and the boat with migrants who sank, and the different media coverage. yes, it's racist. It's racist. I mean, it's the life of all people does not have the same value. And if you are white and blonde, you are more human than if you are brown and dark and coming, I don't know how. I mean, this is like this, it's pure racism and there's no other explanation for it. Uh, recently, I have a friend that was telling me that she's professor at the university and one student wanted to do her master's research on the question of why Ukrainian refugees were better seen than any other refugees. And my professor, my friend, told her that I think, I mean, think about this better because I don't think there is to do a master thesis to know the answer for this question.
Yeah,
I mean, so yeah,
that's true.
I don't know. Some people maybe want to be blind or not, but I mean, it's clear it's like this. To think, for instance, that we in Spain we have more in common with Ukrainian people than with Moroccan people is not true at all. I mean, it's simply not true. But
Yeah,
we already develop our societies building on these ideas of racism and classification of societies depending on X factors. So definitely the treatment that Ukrainian refugees, which I do believe is good that we host the refugees and we answer how we did in that case, but we should do it like this with everybody else because you cannot say that those people fleeing Boko Haram from Nigeria are not in need of giving refugee asylum, or people live in Afghanistan, or anybody. And I mean, like we didn't go and look for them and bring them to our countries. We let them come and try to arrive in the most infamous conditions possible that people can travel in the world. And when they arrive, those one lucky to do so, we want to send them back or put them in a cage or anything which is not definitely what somebody that has done that long journey of escaping, surviving, resisting, and to try to, be something, if not the answers that we should give them, but the first based on racism, and this has impacted asylum seekers from many other countries because all the resources have been put to help Ukrainian refugees, but and then there is no resources for other people, or it has been used as an excuse to delay all those years of people who have seek asylum and still not an answer for them or denying the asylum or anything. Also impacted in terms of the economic opportunities there was for people that are, let's say, not having the necessary documents to work legally in the country. And then this is a competition, to work on these informal sectors of the economy where people find chances. I mean, there is a lot of impact definitely, but it's clear that there is a lot of racism and that we are not willing to lose some white guys, but we are okay to lose 500 people that sank in a boat with many women and children in front of the eyes of the security, the coast guards of Greece. So, I mean, I think that is summary of the humanity that we are living in right now in this
yes,
world.
yes. Yeah, I hope really it changes because I mean we are seeing not only this in the European region, uh, but in other parts of the world as well. It's even in Australia. It's to some extent it's even in India as well. Because we have recently seen there are several refugees coming from Myanmar, Bangladesh side, and in India also I have observed this kind of similar thing. Of course, it's not to, like a greater extent. But here, in Europe, I think it's much more visible because almost people from Latin America, Asia, Africa, all are, possibly migrating to the European region. But in India, of course, it's only the few countries nearby, the neighboring countries, which people are migrating. But yes, it's a issue everywhere in the world. And I hope, like as you said, this is the current situation of the humanity and the human world that we live in. But let's hope for the best, that things might change, and individuals like you are there to contribute and improvise. So I'm really hopeful that situation might change in the future. So I think we are almost at the end of the podcast now. So Victoria, what message would you like to give to future generations stepping into the field of peace and conflict research, or even the kind of humanitarian work that you're also doing? So can you please extend a little bit, because this question is primarily for the students who are trying to make a career in this specific particular niche.
Yeah, I would like to shed light on a question that I've been seeing recently a lot, and that it doesn't make me so happy. No, I noticed that I mean, every time we have more and more people are researching on peace and conflict and security studies and all of this. But we have like a lot of websites or social media accounts, etc., that focus only on following developments that happen in a conflict, let's say, from a neutral point of view. I mean, like just mentioning today, there was a bomb and I don't know what happened. And then we have been able to see the planes of I don't know which country doing X, and like I mean, like there's no context, there's no contextualization of the impact of those facts happening. I mean, I find it so hard to address the conflict situation or to try to research on the reasons and on the consequences of violence and war if you just want to focus on the kind of weapons are being used, the kind of military equipment has been used, the kind of strategic military strategy has been used, as if the war was something happening standing alone and not related to the context where it happens. So, I mean, like, I would like to highlight this, that peace and conflict studies and security studies cannot be detaching the study of the violence from those people who are subjects of that violence, and that we really need to look not only at military developments and who sold how many millions of dollars in weapons to another one that are being used, and all of these kind of things, and not paying attention to the consequences this has, the human suffering it creates, how that impacts political, economic, social affairs, cultural affairs, a lot of things that, I mean, cannot separate them and pretend that I'm not related to the violence. So this is what I would like to say, is that not detaching the humanitarian, the human perspective and the cultural, the social perspective of violence from the study of violence, war, security, etc. Because we are risking to not actually understand anything if we don't pay attention to all that dimensions.
Yes, definitely. I hope the students take away all these key points with them and try to utilize in their respective career paths. So thank you very much, Victoria, again for your precious time. And we hope to get you on board again for the future episode, maybe in the coming months or possibly next year, because I would love to discuss a lot of things, because from the humanitarian perspective, especially because few things, we couldn't actually discuss because there is a time limit, of course, of around like 45 minutes. But definitely in the near future, possibly in next 6 months, we'll definitely try to have one more episode with you. And yeah, we wish you all the best with your work. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the chance and give me the opportunity to be able to speak about these questions that are sadly not being addressed as much as they should be. So I really appreciate you giving me this space and hope that this episode will be helpful for the students and will be nice to be listened to anybody. So thank you so much.